Olá, bom dia. Colemanton here with the Good Morning Portugal live stream. Special guest later on after the facts and figures from Jorge Branco will be Will Thomson. Now, Will was really the person who made me take this seriously. He's an incredible character, as I'm sure you'll discover if you stick around. He's going to join me, 10 or 15 minutes time here on the live stream. And he's like a Netflix character. Not wanting to diminish or undermine anything he's doing, but just the way he goes about things. He's like an investigator from his scientific background. He's also a very strong communitarian and activist and a pretty amazing guy. Larger than life and absolutely loving and committed to life and the beauty of life, sanctity of life, and hence his passion about the whole COVID-19 coronavirus phenomenon. And why it was irresistible to me to take him seriously and interview him a little bit before it became very serious to myself, certainly, and to other people, it would appear. Good morning to you, Owen. Hola, bon dia from Owen. So we will be using Jorge Branco's facts and figures this morning before we have a chat with Will. I'm sure you're going to find that an interesting conversation, and he covers it from every angle. So don't be afraid to ask any questions you've got whatsoever. He'll be pretty straight, I think, in his responses, but that's what's so great about him as well. If a little bit surprising sometimes as well. So let's have a look at this fabulous service from Jorge Branco, Australian, I think, now in Portugal. Back here discovering his Portuguese roots, and I think by the sound of it grew up in Australia, but he's producing this really good newsletter for estrangeiros, for foreigners in Portugal, and he's got the facts and figures, a really good balance. I like the balance of what he's doing. Other good sources, of course, are Safe Communities Portugal and the work of Craig Morfitt. Their names to look out for. I did get someone unsubscribed me on YouTube yesterday for my political sarcasm. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to dispense with that. I'm only human, and I don't see myself as a scientist or a news source particularly. You know, we do a very particular thing here on the Good Morning Portugal live stream. If you want your just straight facts and figures, yes, Safe Communities Portugal, Craig Morfitt, and of course Jorge Branco here, who I'm delighted to say I've been in touch with, and he may well be joining me next week on the stream. It'd be great to have him on here from time to time. Hump Day, unfortunately, brings the largest jump in cases since Good Friday. He says another 32 victims of the pandemic. These numbers are broadly similar to what we've seen for the last few days, something that can best be seen in the graph below from Diario de Noticias, with total cases represented by the bars and the percentage increase in the line graph. But the headline figures, look, 18,091 confirmed cases now in Portugal, 643 in new cases, with a 3.69 increase in percentage, and 599 deaths, 32 new deaths on the day before. That's a 5.64% increase. Those are figures for yesterday, and this is the graph that George is talking about. For those of you who prefer it in this visual manner, I suggest subscribing, jorgebranco.substack.com, which is a newsletter service. There you go. And this is what we're going to talk about with Will as well, the roadmap for the exit strategy. And the European Union releases their roadmap. Big news from today is the EU proposing some guidelines for, the eventual lifting of coronavirus measures. They're pretty general recommendations rather than specific orders, and the EU stresses measures will vary country by country, and this isn't a sign that the measures should be lifted immediately, reports Publico. The goal is to avoid a repeat of the somewhat chaotic scenes on show as individual countries went into lockdown at vastly different speeds. An increase in infections is inevitable if restrictions are eased and further lockdowns may be needed, the EU says. The announcement has been widely covered throughout Europe, so you should look for the details in your own language/news source of your choice. Irish Times is a particular view that George links to, and the original press release from the EU. So this is a great service. Thank you, George. And the Diario de Noticias highlights a few of the EU's recommendations, including the gradual lifting of limits on gatherings, shops and restaurants, the availability of immunity tests, and there's a link to that, and self-test kits for people to check if they're infected. The EU also talks about the use of phone apps to track cases, saying the data would be particularly relevant while lifting restrictions. Apple and Google are working on building a coronavirus tracking system into their phones. I bet they are. And I've mixed feelings about that, but I'm sure Will have something to say about that as well. Portugal death rate remains below most European countries is another part of the newsletter, which you can look at yourself. And in brief, the number of unemployed Portuguese people jumps to 353,000. After 5 years of reducing debt, Portugal's budget deficit is set to soar to 7.1% of GDP. And he also links to how long will social distance rules be needed. Great newsletter compilation here. And on a lighter note, he always finishes in a sort of classic news style with on the brighter and lighter side of things. Came with the Fitish burning of the ribbons is a massive student party famous across Europe. The most well-known event happens in Coimbra. I have to say, I've never heard of this. The home of Portugal's first university, but Porto and Lisbon also have celebrations. The Lisbon event is usually next month, but thanks to the coronavirus, it's been brought forward and moved to Instagram. It's a shame for the students, but at least it means you can check out the 40 Portuguese and international artists on show without feeling like the weird old guy crashing the student party. Yeah, well said, George, and hope to talk to you in person here on the live stream on Good Morning Portugal next week. I think we're hoping to get you here and joining us. So let's say good morning to a few people. Not seeing Will just yet. I think he will be joining us, but he lives right out in the middle of nowhere. So let's go back to saying hello to a few people and how you're doing this morning. Will has looked at this from he leaves no stone unturned. These sort of Netflix things that people are looking at, these detective series, he's like a real live version of that. Leaves no stone unturned and takes everything with a pinch of salt and has this sort of incredible investigative / activist approach to things. Good morning, everyone, from Eloise Healy, one of the stars of our Happy Homesteader group. Really enjoying your contribution, so thank you very much, Eloise. Steve, good morning, Carl. Listening to the heavy pitter and patter of rainfall on our motorhome in Luli. Lazy day starting by listening to your welcome update, Steve and Claire. It's so good of you to join me. Thank you very much indeed. And I can hear that sound in my mind's ear, the pitter patter of rain on the top of a motorhome roof. Always makes me think of playing cards or dominoes as well, when you're stuck inside there in a motorhome or caravan. And we said hi to Owen. Good morning to you, mate. Nikki Thornton, good morning. Smiley face and a thumbs up for me this morning from Nikki. Thank you to you, Nikki. And when do we think borders will open? How can we come in? Yes, Hannah in South London there, chomping at the bit to get back to Portugal. I don't know the answer. I think we're going to have an extension of the state of emergency, quite frankly, Hannah. And I don't think it's going to be within the next month or so. But talk now is, I think, it's like the governments are throwing a bit of a bone to the population with the idea of exit strategy and lifting regulations just to keep people a little bit sane and to keep their eyes on the horizon, I suppose, is one way it could be framed. But I don't know. You as far as I'm concerned, we want to welcome you back, Hannah, but obviously with the appropriate medical measures and risk of infection reduced. It's a really hard one to call. And Owen said, Neil, good morning to you, Neil, from a very wet Alvito. It looks like rain all over the country at the moment here in Portugal, and those yellow weather warnings were pretty accurate, weren't they? I really loved sitting out in the thunderstorm yesterday. I was undercover, looking at the garden, seeing the birds flying around, hearing the birds, and enjoying the thunder in the distance. Morning, Carl. Self and a group of friends are putting together a Forgotten Shopping Facebook page to help those wherever they are with their missing shopping items. Nice idea, Owen. So just do keep us informed about that. Join our Happy Homesteaders group in Facebook and let us know how that shapes up, how we can get involved and how we can help. I hope the airlines survive so we can come back. Yes, Nikki. It's very interesting, isn't it? How this has changed so drastically. And, one of the themes yesterday was like, what are your OMG moments about what this has brought? It's like, oh, wow, yeah. The airlines, I think in this case, you're saying, yeah, the airlines could go bust. What's going to happen to air travel? There is, of course, a rail service, a very romantic rail service, I think, from London through on the Eurostar through France, Spain, and eventually into Lisbon by sleeper. Probably goes through Porto first, doesn't it? So human beings being human beings and needing to travel will find a way to do this. But let's face it, everyone in the back of their minds thought, I don't know how long we're going to be able to fly to Portugal for 20 quid. This is great on a sort of personal level, but it doesn't add up in the big picture, does it? And we knew something was going to happen at some point. I'm sure, or that was in the back of our minds, that it couldn't continue. It wasn't sustainable in the biggest picture. So I really don't know, how that's going to be. But we will do it, won't we? We'll do whatever we need to do in the best way we know how and is available to us in the coming months and years. Things are changing drastically, and the longer the lockdown goes on, and the longer things, I think, settle down, and we're into this great pause, as people are calling it, or the great lockdown, I think the more of an impact that will have on life as we used to know it. London seems to have the weather of the Algarve, though, been glorious here for weeks, and that's not often a bragging right that Londoners have, is it? That they have better weather or have Algarvian weather, but that seems to be how it is at the moment. Yeah, it's peeing down here in Portugal, and it is lovely and sunny in London at the moment, in South London. And I've seen incredible memes. London usually on a bank holiday, it's raining. London in the summer, it's raining. London at Wimbledon time, it's raining. But London in lockdown, glorious sunshine. The great irony of our interaction with the weather. Now, Will is knocking about in the background, and he'll be joining me very soon. Like I said, he's a real life kind of Netflix. They could make a Netflix series about this guy with his approach. Mickey Mayer says, "Well, that's depressing." I think that's the contrast, isn't it? Is that me and my is that my forecasting about the future, Mickey, or is that the fact that London have got better weather than us? I don't know. Let me know. And Bridget Mapley, good morning. A sunny morning near Cambridge, UK. Have rebooked my flights, friend of June. So fingers crossed. We'll see about that, Bridget. But we'll look forward to welcoming you under the right conditions. So let's bring Will on now. Good morning to you, Will. How are you, my friend?
I'm all right. I'm okay.
Good. Yeah,
I'm excited. Trying not to go crazy.
You're trying not to go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
a lot of information to take in the last few weeks, and it's sort of bringing everything together in quite a strange way.
Yes. Well, that's why I described you as like a Netflix investigator. A drama could quite easily be made of you and your life of the last couple of months. And how I've summarized it, if I was writing the kind of copy for the series, that caricatures your journey just recently, is like you leave no stone unturned and you take everything with a pinch of salt. Do you think that's a fair assessment of how you've been going about this?
That's not so bad assessment, I guess. I started calling myself Quincy Medical Examiner like a week ago, because normally I do the epidemiology stuff, but all the confusion, what's coming out, and these unanswered questions, it was like, right, we need to go into the virology side and biology side. Yeah. I'm not really qualified to do that stuff, but I felt like we weren't getting enough answers, and the confusion is causing a lot of fear, if anything, at home. And that's actually spilling out onto the world stage now, if you think about the World Health Organization being sacked off. So it's really quite massive, if you think about it that way. But I think I've stumbled across the answers, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on?
Yes, indeed. Well, let's go into that bigger picture in a little while. But could we first? Let's have just a couple more comments and good mornings from people. Good morning to you, sure. Dawn in Luli. Mickey, that's depressing. Let's see if I really like Will's mix of how he sees the world, because underlying it all is just a love of nature and the best of humanity. Let me put it that way. So let's see what we could talk about with Will on that front. And Gary Austin, throughout the crisis, we've seen the very worst of humanity and indeed the very best, but we all know which endures the most. This has taught us important lessons for the future. Thank you for that, Gary. So the picture in Portugal, Will, how are you seeing it? We are flattening the curve here, aren't we?
We're doing good. We're heading back for zero. If you extrapolate into the future, it looks like we got about 10 days left, and we'll be back to pretty much zero and just moving on to the next stage of sort of how do we start sneaking out of the caves, tentatively, and start working out if it's safe, we got about 10 days left of this, and we can start thinking about, saying we're winning and starting to get back to being able to go outside.
That's really encouraging. Great to hear that. But then, of course, the lot of caveats around how we go back outside, right? An exit strategy, and lockdown lifting. What's your view on that? How should have you been looking at how the EU is suggesting lockdown should be lifted, and what's your view on it?
I think that the main big word is tentative. So you do sort of bit by bit. You start with the bare minimum, people who really need to get back on with stuff, but you don't go full on. Everyone shouldn't go running back out to cinemas and pubs and things like that. We're still going to have to do a couple of weeks at least of the social distancing and if some cases suddenly pop up again, we might have to retreat a little bit. But there really needs to be a technological focus, I think, of communication on making sure everyone knows if a case shows up in an area and how to deal with that area rather than having to shut the whole country down. How can we have a system where new cases are identified quickly and deal with that? But I think that's what China are doing, and they're doing pretty good. Their biggest problem now is new cases coming from outside. So there is a sort of a method we can employ to slowly get back to normality over time.
So there are some ideas. I mean, they're not exactly precedents, are there? Because that's the big word that's characterized this whole thing, is like unprecedented. These are just like best bets, are they, for how we might go back to normal, if we ever are going to go back to normal?
Yes, we just have to be really careful how we do it. And it's kind of the first time we've really had to do this. We've never had to deal with this before, so we're learning as we go.
Yeah.
But again, we can look to China and say, well, what worked there? I think Austria's coming out now. They got back to zero really quick, and they're starting to open the doors. And I think the Czech Republic too. But I think there has to be a major discussion now about the mask. With this idea of everyone having a mask when they're outdoors, that would be a big benefit. And it only works if everyone's doing it. And then I think it really has to be about an app where everyone can see what's going on all the time. But there doesn't seem to be anything out there that fits that really can answer those, fit the bill for that.
Okay, getting a few questions coming in and observations. You were spotted on Cantor's news, very knowledgeable, and that was more engaging with. I hate using the term, but it's a kind of shorthand that everybody understands. But you're engaging with the conspiracy theorists there. As I say, you leave no stone unturned. You've looked at the 5G thing. You've looked at the Chinese bioweapon thing. Everything, it comes under your sort of scrutiny. Owen saw you on there. Question from Mickey: why would we not go back to normal? That's a really good question. And what do you mean by normal? I suppose Mickey is the key there. Do you want to pick that up, Will?
I know what she's talking about. I don't want to. Same as you. We don't want to go back the way things were. When I say normal, I just mean not quarantine. If we can go back out and reevaluate the way we do things in terms of consumerism and so on, that would be fantastic. So let's not call it normal. What are we go back to moving forward?
Yes, go back to moving forward. I like that. A housekeeping question here. Well, how do we follow Will Thomson?
How do we follow me?
I guess friend him up on Facebook. I mean, you put your videos out, your commentary on your Facebook timeline, don't you? That's the way you tend to do.
I do, and I tend to leave them there for about a day or so. Sadly, in order to know what's going on in the world of conspiracies, I have to maintain quite a few people that are in those circles. And sadly, if I start writing anything scientific that refutes what they're saying and pointing out data or evidence that shows that what they're arguing is wrong, they'll jump on me and start arguing, that I'm like deep state kind of guy. So I tend to leave them there for a day or so, just enough to let everyone hear it, and then I have to get rid of them. Otherwise, it attracts the crazies a little bit.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Donald, talking of crazies, I don't know what made me think of this, but Donald Trump and the WHO. What's your response to him? His fit of pique yesterday.
It is frightening. That's the really frightening thing. The WHO back in the day got rid of smallpox, which was killing up to 500 million people in the 100 years leading up to it, and it was completely eradicated with vaccines. They've got polio almost down to nothing. They hold Ebola in check in Africa all the time, and the amount of good stuff they do around the world is really underappreciated. One of the things people don't like is the fact that Bill Gates is such a large contributor, and he does, because of his investment in them, he tends to get a lot more say than he really should. But if you start having big countries like America taking away their funding, that gives more power to individuals like that, and it's undermining the side, the fact that we can, we do need to have bodies like that, scientific bodies that are keeping us safe from all this stuff.
Yeah, and interesting again there, Bill Gates. These are all kind of figures in the pantomime of what we're looking at the moment. The sort of projection screens for how everybody feels about everything, and their worst fears are projected onto various characters. I think you're right with Trump. It's like he really clearly doesn't think things through, does he? You would imagine, wouldn't you, if you're a big contributor to something, you would equate that with amount of power and influence. And you could say, look, we put a lot of money into this organization. We're not happy with this particular bit. But what he tends to do is just make these massive gestures of like, well, that's it. I'm just cutting you off. You're fired, basically. He's doing his apprentice thing, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, the guy clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. It's an absolute given that he was warned well in advance. When we were all being told in the news that it was like, there's a problem, but everyone stay calm. Just everyone be aware there's a possible pandemic coming, or epidemic, and we're trying to deal with it. Behind closed doors, they were phoning all the leaders, going, guys, we don't know if we can control this, so get ready. There could be a big problem. But because of the fact that H1N1 was sort of dealt with and didn't become a big deal, and the fact that they beat SARS, they discovered that SARS was could be beat with thermal cameras. The governments this time were like, nah, we're sure you've got it. We're not going to do anything. Donald Trump was warned and didn't do anything early enough. And now he's trying to cover his tracks and turn it around to make it look like it was their fault. If you look into the background, what happened with the phone calls and so on, Britain was given warning. Everybody was given the warning, but a lot of governments didn't listen. And now he's pushing the chloroquine angle, which goes into this the debate of the medical side of what's going on. And there's actually some doctors giving interviews right now about saying there's something weird about this virus, and it's not behaving like normal flu and pneumonia. And so it may be a blood disease, and therefore maybe we should investigate the hydrochloroquine thing. Maybe that will work, because that's like malaria. And that scares me, because it's almost like Bill Gates, Donald Trump won't necessarily make money out of hydrochloroquine, but lots of the people he is in bed with, his cronies, will. The stock markets for chloroquine are already going through the roof. Loads of countries are organizing, trying to buy it up. But as yet, there's no decent evidence to say it's going to help at all. And it's almost like the whole thing is being sidetracked to get rid of the people who are protecting us and promote a drug that may not work for his benefit. And that's scary stuff going on.
So unlike American politics as well, isn't it? Who'd have thought? The question, connected slightly here. Is there a possibility, from Gary, is there a possibility of transmission of the virus by insects like flies, mosquitoes, and other crawling insects? That's a total nightmare question, Gary, but thanks for putting it.
No. Not 1% chance of an ant walking across the virus and then walking up your leg and going into your mouth. But apart from that, no. The only thing we've seen that this one does infect is humans and bats and cats. The tigers and the lions and the cats.
Okay. All right. So nothing to worry about. That's reassuring. Thank you, Will.
Why are we worried about insects?
It was a question from Gary. This is the thing.
Yeah. Okay. I guess the mosquito. I haven't looked into it, but I guess the mosquito thing might be a question. The mosquitoes pass malaria, which really does get into your blood and fills up all your blood cells with the actual virus. This virus is not acting like a normal flu. It targets the ACE receptors. You've probably heard about them now. It doesn't infect the lining of the lung and the throat. It goes for the very bottom of your lung. where these ACE receptors are all densely packed. And some of these ACE receptors are in the back of your throat, some are on your tongue, you have some in your intestines, you have some in your kidneys, and you have quite a lot in the capillaries, the smaller blood vessels all around your body. Now, if you look into all the symptoms that's going on, and people are questioning, why are people getting kidney failure? Why are the oxygen monitors reading 0 oxygen in your blood and things? If you look into how the virus actually attacks specific places, it explains all of it. So imagine the asymptomatic people who they might breathe it in and get a few of them on the back of their throat, and the infection stays up there and gives you the lack of sense of smell, gives you the tingly sore throat, enough to make your body go, oh, there's something wrong, let's raise your fever. But the virus can infect a bit down the middle, and it's really hard for it to get down to the bottom of the lungs. But on rare occasions it does, and that's when you become when it becomes a serious problem, when it starts infecting the actual alveoli. And from there, it can actually drill holes, so to speak, into your blood and then start passing around to your kidneys, to your to the capillaries around your heart. Sorry. Yeah.
Right, yes, okay. Well, if you're having your breakfast at the moment, there's a picture for you. And this is what I'm talking about with Will here, and this sort of comprehensive view you take. On another note, there is the mental health angle here, isn't there? How complex and terrifying it is in one sense, that we don't really understand it. By your own admission, it's like these sort of you get T-boned by new information coming through, and so you've got that to deal with on a kind of mental health level and staying sane about all of this. But there still are practical things you could do. You mentioned masks, didn't you, and the importance of masks. What else do you recommend? As a bigger picture of sort of from a practical and positive point of view that we can do to give us our best protection against those worst case scenarios, like the one you've just articulated?
Well, even the doctors now, the big information this week, it's the same thing I said to you right at the start. You remember the advice? Get lots of vitamin C, get lots of rest, and lots of vitamin D. Okay. And now it's looking like that it's the best way to have your immune system well balanced, so that if it does get into a little bit, your body almost immediately fights back and gets rid of it before it has a chance to get down into your down to the bottom.
All right, yeah, I do remember you saying that.
Smoking as well. Smoking tends to stop the cilia in your throat from working so well. Those little things that are always pushing stuff back up again. When you smoke a lot, the tar lines them and stops them working. So less smoking gives your body a better chance of keeping it up and out rather than it getting down to the bottom.
Okay, so quit the smoking. Vitamin C.
This.
There he is. It's just I'm guessing that's your coping strategy, Will.
Yeah, it's the only advice I've got now.
And full transparency as well. There he is. He's no hypocrite. He's just telling you what you should do.
I'm a hypocrite. More of a nihilist, I guess.
A nihilist, okay. So vitamin C, vitamin D, wear the masks, stop smoking, have plenty of rest. I mean, these are things that are good that we should be doing anyway, right? The vitamin D thing that you uncovered, or the avenue that you explored, because there was this. Yeah. There was a realization about, wasn't there, where people with darker skins were struggling more with the virus.
That's right.
What's the connection there with vitamin D?
People with darker skin, their skin does not produce vitamin D so fast. Pale people tend to produce, as when they get sunshine, produce it much better. So if you've got dark people living in northern climates, it's almost impossible for them to have good vitamin D uptake. And most of the northern world has problems with vitamin D, with deficiency, especially coming out of winter like we're doing now. Countries like Norway and Sweden, it's a big problem. So they actually they have programs to fortify the food, which is actually helping. And if you look up there, they're actually not doing too badly. In southern climates now, we should be seeing some awful scenes down there. But it's actually, although the virus is still spreading, the actual news that's coming out is a lot more positive than it really should be. And again, I think that ties in. And interestingly, if you look at the disparity between the number of women and men dying, it's about 5 or 10% more men than women. It's the same if you look at vitamin D deficiency. It tends to be that men are more deficient. So it explains that as well. As for these doctors that are dying in unusually high numbers, they're working for a couple of weeks, 2, 3, 4 weeks, fully clothed in protective gear and barely getting any sunshine. at all. So it kind of explains that as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. And we are well placed here in Portugal, obviously, for vitamin, well, on a good day anyway, vitamin D, getting out in the sunshine. We are in lockdown, so we can get that rest as well if you're not being driven mad with insomnia or whatever. And of course, vitamin C, the oranges and the citrus fruits crops are still on the trees. Ordinarily, they're on the ground, aren't they? Not being eaten. It's a crime. So we're well placed here. Get vitamin C inside you guys, and wear a mask, as Will's alluding to there. A couple of we'll stay on a bit longer and take more questions for Will, but a couple of observations here. On a slightly different note, what are your views on the suggestion that Portugal residents should agree to cancel all holidays out of the country this year and concentrate on rebooting the economy here and spend any disposable income here at home instead of taking the financial resources out of the country, whether in the form of holidays or online shopping? Good question, Neil. I'm all about localization myself. That's, I guess, the localization version of holidaying, staycations.
Yeah, there's three obvious yeses to that to that question. First is yes, our local tourism industry is now struggling, and the more we can do as a country to help them get back on their feet, that's brilliant. The second one is about not going back to normal. We should think about this level of not flying so much, not traveling so much. So keeping things local on that level in terms of the environment is a good thing. But the third thing is, if we get back to zero, or some countries get back to zero and start moving on, but other countries are struggling, then all this cross-border travel is just going to make it all get worse again. We're going to have to fight back slowly by having countries pretty much isolated from each other. And when a country's free, we can actually then start to focus on helping other places where they're struggling as well. So while isolation for us individually might be over soon, we're going to still have to come up with localized containment methods, whether that's in a town or a region or it's in a countrywide region. So I imagine there will be a whole year at least of this. Let's just not do the massive global tourism thing for a while.
Yeah. Okay. And the recommendation to the people who watch this who are not in Portugal is think about being here and moving here, not holidaying so much, but like safely moving yourself here. Thoroughly recommend it. I'm sure Will does as well. Bon dia from Lilu. Stay in Portugal. Spend our money here. Keep planting veg and being healthy. We don't want to go anywhere else. Yes, well said, Lilu. And yeah, and for you folks, you expats, explorers, etc. Yeah, get over here, but get over here safely and stay here. It's a great place to have a home and be healthy. This is interesting about how governments are funding or not their health services. It looks like a 99-year-old man is putting the government to shame in the UK. I mean, that's not easy. That's not difficult at the moment, putting the government to shame. But Captain Tom Moore is doing a fab job of inspiring the nation. 12 million he's raised so far this morning. Is Portugal doing any national fundraising to support health services? I haven't seen too much in the news yet. I haven't either, Nikki. But I just thought it's great what the captain is doing there. Surely as somebody in government, you must be put to shame by seeing a 99-year-old man walking up and down his garden to raise money for the bloody health service that should be funded by taxes. But there you go. I don't know if you've got a comment on that, Will. Yeah,
I just had an idea. Doesn't Madonna live here?
She has. She comes and goes, I think. Yeah. What's your idea with Madonna?
We just ask her for half of her money and the whole country's fixed. Done.
So I missed the beginning of that. We do what with her?
Just take half her money and give it to the whole country, and we'll all be fine again.
Yeah, okay. So we get behind a Portuguese tax request, do we? I just send her a big tax bill from Portugal.
I'm very disappointed about the lack of any stories you've heard about the rich helping out and donating. You hear a handful of stories, but it's a bit saddening to know that in a public forum, you aren't seeing all the well-off and the affluent giving up a lot of their money to help out now. Maybe that will come. I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose we are seeing the beginnings of that, aren't we? With I saw a rather, I don't know. It's a difficult one, isn't it? It is great that celebrities do want to lend a hand, but it's a little bit icky as well from my point of view. It just seemed a bit like, how Brass Eye managed to, was it Brass Eye? Chris Morris who managed to sort of prank some celebrities into endorsing things that were completely made up. It just feels a bit like that at the moment. And I think you're right. I think there could be a lot. But maybe that's what will happen. Is, people's conscience will be pricked and moved more, and it will move beyond the usual kind of PR puff, kind of celebrity endorsement stuff, into some genuine and real, giving in a way that people truly can.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else you want to add, Will, at the moment? I mean, we haven't talked about 5G. Maybe we shouldn't. We haven't really talked about Bill Gates, compulsory vaccination, those sorts of things that are really pushing people's buttons at the moment. Maybe we should call it and just get you back another time. But is there something you want to end with? A message you want to share with everybody?
No, I'd have to cover all those subjects simultaneously at the same time. What's the best thing I could look into right now? Blah, 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 blah. Well, the big topic this week is the bioweapon or not. Yeah. Okay. Did China release a bioweapon? I would say to people, take it with a pinch of salt. The investigation I'm finding is it looks more and more like it was released from the lab by accident, which means it's not engineered. Those labs are set up to try and protect us from all these viruses that are out there. But it was always known that there were issues with them, and they were kind of ignored. There was reports going out, we need to have more money spent to make sure these things are secure. But sadly, it looks like a couple of people messed up by accident, and that's what's led to this. But the scary thing, this discussion leads on to, like, if Trump starts going full-on anti-China rhetoric and blaming them, you can imagine that getting really out of control. So we have to tread very lightly when it comes to throwing accusations about that. Yes, okay. A good caution there to perhaps conclude with. Mickey's getting the last word in here. Too late for that. Rich people giving money. And yeah, it is. I think it is. Everything is gratefully received, isn't it? Because we live in a world of that kind. Where it's all about money. But maybe that's one of the changes, is that we can't just reduce everything to money, and it's exemplified in Trump's behaviour, isn't it? Cutting off the WHO with money. Hopefully, part of the sense will be brought to by this. Is that we can't just shorthand everything like that, and it's not just about money. We need much bigger, broader conversations and connections with people than making it just all financial, which it seems to be part of the exposure that's gone on at the moment. How weak that system is. Loving the extended program this morning. Content brilliant. Thanks, Will. Maybe an hour show each morning should be the new normal with everything going on in the world. I hope you will come back from time to time, Will. Yeah. And now, as we threaten to go, we get more comments and questions coming in. This doesn't mean anything to me. It might to you. Histoplasmosis, Will. What does that mean? I know what toxoplasmosis is, but can you just... Histoplasmosis is a new one to me.
Give us a bit more on that. The funds that Sorry, Will?
Go on.
The funds that are raised through funding shouldn't be given to the NHS. That is the government's job. These funds should be given to the families of health service staff. Yes, Neil, who have lost their lives. Yes, absolutely right. That's perfect, because we know what the politicians will do with it. They'll just put it in place where they should have paid themselves, or should have appropriated taxes anyway. That's a really good point, Neil. Thank you for that. We might have
I'd love a system whereby we could identify every single person and how much they lost or gained, and every single person who has increased their wealth over the course of this, you go after them and you give it to the people who lost the most and balance it. And we could have done that if we hadn't done the Brexit, certainly for the UK. Everyone would have been forced to reveal their earnings, but now, I don't know. I think the Jacob Rees-Moggs of the world will get to keep hidden.
Yes,
it's not a good.
His name does come to mind, and the disaster capitalists seem to be doing okay, and they're quite quiet at the moment, aren't they? Sort of conspicuous by their absence at the moment. Those folks, and let's hope for some more accountability of that kind, so we can see who's profiting from this. And if you're someone who's profiting from this, like, you've got to take a really good look at yourself, haven't you? This is just so grim. But Will, thank you so much. You're welcome anytime, basically, if you want to use this platform to share your unique brand view on what's happening in the world. And the adventure's just begun, hasn't it? Really, in many ways, in how we're going to assimilate and adapt to this, because it's Darwinian, isn't it? It's true that the strong survive, because that's just like a physical thing, but it's adaptation that's the important thing. And how are we going to adapt to this?
Well, the most important thing now is it's pretty clear if you look at every country that lockdown works, that you have to get the R naught. It doesn't matter where it's going fast or slow. If it's not going down, you're not winning. And all the technology like Singapore and so in the world, they stopped it going through the roof and slowed it down. Taiwan the same. But the only thing that gets it going down is the full lockdown. And right now people are getting very tired, and the confusion is there's like protests being formed now in America and stuff. They're believing the Donald Trump narrative, and people are going to try and give up on the lockdown. And it's really sad because we're actually winning. We're just in the final stretch now. If we just keep this up a little bit longer, only a week or 2 or 3, max 4 maybe, we can beat this and we can move on to the, declare victory and then focus on the mop up and the coordination. People quit now.
Okay,
it's not good. So everyone hang in there a bit.
Yes, and well done everyone who's playing their part in this. I mean, that's it's really important. The guys here, who check in on the Good Morning Portugal stream, definitely doing their bit. The histoplasmosis was the disease found in bat caves. Gary is adding there. Will,
histoplasma doesn't sound like a disease. It sounds more like something that happens to a process, more like toxoplasmosis, where your cell bursts. But he's right that both the SARS and this one it's bat origin in caves. That's why the labs have been looking at the bats to try and look for these other coronaviruses that might do the jump. The suspicion is the fact that the ones that are closest to the one we know now are found in bats over 900 miles away in a cave. So it makes you wonder, could the bat have infected a cat and then the cat walked 900 miles? It makes it look more likely that it did come out of the lab by accident. You see what I mean?
Yes, indeed. Chris Kelly, the big problem with hanging is that, and it's a cliffhanger. I'm not quite sure what that means, Chris, but I'm sure Will's going to take us up on it might be a reference to bats. Will join us at some point again, I hope. Thank you everybody for joining us this morning on a slightly extended Good Morning Portugal live stream. This will be available on YouTube and a podcast. Last word to you, Will.
Looks like a sunny day, so get out and get some vitamin D. Don't go too far. Social distancing.
Perfect. Cheers, Will. Take care. Bye for now.
All right.